Welcome, Exiles. Today we're going to talk about my strength stacker. I'm going to end up doing a showcase on it, but to start things off with, I committed a cardinal sin for PoE, or in my mind, what is a cardinal sin, which is having so much currency that you don't even think clearly, you don't even make the right decision, you go straight to the expensive option. This used to drive me up the wall when I would see people that have the funding and the means to make a perfect setup for a character or whatever, and then I would see him make a small stupid mistake just to spend more money, just because they would just auto go default to the most expensive option, even though maybe the cheaper option or alternative options were actually better. And I find myself doing that today, and I gotta be critical of it because I think I've made a worse character because of it. And through a string of just spending way too much currency just trying to craft perfect gear, I've made a super expensive character that ultimately isn't that good. It's isn't that good for various metrics, but I want to talk about this because I have things like Iron Fortress, Meginors Vise. These are really cheap uniques, but they're solid. They have some stats to them, and then compare them to like my gloves and my chest piece. What you see in front of you here represents this chest piece is something like 100x in self-crafting investment. Granted, I got screwed on the crafting process. RNG decided, yeah, we're not going to help you out. We're going to make you take 100 Warlord Exalts to hit percent strength 3 times. That was pretty unlucky, but point is, I spent a lot of currency to make what? Is this actually better than Iron Fortress? And in a lot of ways, it isn't. For example, Iron Fortress represents 50% more damage because the scaling for a strength stacker, which is the percent damage per strength, is getting multiplied by 50% more because you're getting 3% instead of 2% per 10 strength. So example number 1, this would give us more damage than this chest will. Now, granted, we take this chest off, we lose how much life? We lose 2k life versus if we have the Iron Fortress on, we only have, 9.8k life. So obviously, this chest does scale our life harder, so it has that advantage there. But Iron Fortress comes in and says, hey, I will give you block cap. That represents more defenses, more EHP. It synergizes really well with Dissolution of Flesh, where you want to have basically damage elimination to extend the period where those 2 seconds of not taking damage kicks in and you get your HP back. So ultimately, I think in mapping and whatnot, I will feel better with this chest, even though my one-shot threshold may be a bit higher with this one, if that makes any sense. So what I'm saying here is pretty simple. I spent a lot of currency, and I did that just to make something rare or unique, and ultimately, the build would probably just be better if I used Iron Fortress, because Iron Fortress is that good. And then Meginors Vise isn't necessarily the best cheap option I would recommend, but it's just something I had in my stash to use as a counterpoint in comparison with this synthesized pair of gloves. These pair of gloves cost me, I am pretty sure, around 50x just to craft the suffixes. Granted, another example, I got really unlucky with the null orbs, but the point is, I got so narrow-minded and so focused on I want to craft these perfect little things and I have this amount of budget, I'm going to spend it. I didn't really approach these things in a way where I would make things that are good for the value. I made things that are bad for the cost is what I ended up doing. That's some examples of it. And then another example of it is I got so focused on this whole I'm going to get 25% avoid bleed on the implicits of my jewels that I ended up having jewels in subpar locations. Like Lethal Pride over here with only 2 notables isn't really a great spot for Lethal Pride, but this 25% bleed Lethal Pride actually had good stats here, so it was forced to be here. Then I had an Unnatural Instinct with Avoid Bleed, and I was forcing these things into the build. I think I have Avoid Bleed one other place. Yeah, right here on my Melding of the Flesh. And I was forcing Avoid Bleed into the build just to avoid using a Mana Flask with Remove Bleed, which would solve the problem as well, which then would mean I could be more optimal with my jewel usage, ultimately probably making me have a better character than I would otherwise, forcing these relatively subpar jewels into my build. Like Unnatural Instinct, I don't necessarily think is the right choice here. I don't think Lethal Pride should be here. It should be probably in a better place where I get more notables and can roll them for better strength mods or double damage or intimidate, stuff like that. That would actually be multipliers to my damage. There's the example of using this Abyssal Jewel, which isn't really that good of an Abyssal Jewel, just because it has the Avoid Bleed mod. I could get a much better jewel if I didn't crave that Avoid Bleed, or I wouldn't even need to roll an Abyssal Socket on my gloves, and I could afford to have a much cheaper pair of gloves that would still get me quite a bit of stats. Ultimately, I could probably drop these two passives for all res if I just had a res roll on the suffix, thus helping me balance my melding of the flesh resistances better, stuff like that. There was a lot of cost into setting up this character for these super min-max things, which in the end, did it really min-max to the build, or did I just spend more money to do it? That's the question I have to leave with myself, or I have to live with, and part of it's killed my will, I guess, to push this character further or play it or min-max it more or something, because I'm so upset with myself for the amount of currency I put in, and I've put it in dumb places, and I have basically this built-up frustration with the strength stacker at this point because of how I've spent my money on it, and I personally don't want to look at it too much longer. But regardless, I'm going to show you guys a map showcase with just a normal Phoenix, basically two different times. Once with my min-maxed super expensive gear, and then once where I'll swap in Meginors, and I'll swap in a Iron Fortress, and I'll swap in this instead of a Melding of the Flesh, so that way we aren't really taking advantage of a lot of our rare rolls where we got extra resistances, because without our rares that are crafted really well to have good resistances and good stats at the same time, yeah, we're not going to fit this in. So it'd be a way of, I guess, showcasing the build on a lower budget, so to speak, if the gear is basically crafted worse, so to speak. Stuff like that, basically to showcase, hey, I spent all this money, but did it really make the build better? You guys can be the judge of that, I guess. So I'll showcase, hey, this is the expensive setup, and then I'm going to showcase, hey, this is what it looks like when we take out that expensive gear. I guess going over the build, I should talk about what all I've done, what all I've enjoyed with the character. One thing I am not disappointed with is Dissolution of the Flesh. I was really happy to build with Dissolution of the Flesh, and I was not disappointed. Another thing I found out, I think from people in the comments of the Dissolution of the Flesh video, was they said, hey, use Eternal Youth. The recharge is never turned off. So apparently, with Eternal Youth, this keystone right over here, where it says your recharge applies to your what's it called? Your life pool instead of your energy shield pool. What this means with Dissolution of the Flesh is you're actually not taking damage, you're having your life reserved, which means the recharge never turns off. This means 33% life per second via the recharge that is never getting turned off is used to counteract all the petrified blood degen damage. It's an insane amount of basically sustain for half the damage you're supposed to be taking that you get for free. Not for free, you have to grab Eternal Youth, but it is effectively a very free, free-ish stat, if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm explaining it well enough. I'm probably not, but you get the idea of what I'm talking about here. So I'll go ahead and I'll kill Phoenix real quick here. He's probably going to one-shot me if I stay in that. Well, I don't know. I might be able to tank that. I probably should have tried to tank it, I guess, to, oh, I killed Minotaur. Okay, so that is what the character looks like with the expensive gear. And granted, you might think that looks pretty good, but in the back of my mind, I can't get over the fact that I have put, I'm pretty sure, close to 500x in crafting. Now, granted, that's been items that have been duds or misses and stuff like that, but I put 500x into this thing. I don't think it's worth 500x at all. I really don't. So here is me showcasing what it looks like if I were to take out 150x, say, of that budget and put it into some very affordable, unique items just to compare and contrast for you guys and maybe make your opinion, maybe not make your opinion that, yeah, okay, we lost about 100 strength to switch out those items. Yeah, we lost a little bit of, I was going to say we lost a little bit of life, but actually we gained life, I'm pretty sure, because we got percent life here, and we got percent life from this rare jewel that we had. Okay, so now let's showcase if we're just doing a Phoenix now with 150x less gear, and then you guys can kind of make the judgment for yourselves. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to showcase what Eternal Youth looks like. Here we have Determination, which costs 1200 life, and that's how fast we regen it. You'll see if we go to our defensive pool, it says life recharge per second, 3200, and that's all from this node here, and it's never turned off. I think it's one of the coolest synergies ever. But yeah, And then other things we had in the build is Dissolution of the Flesh for 84 max all res. I just swapped that out because it represents basically making really niche, expensive gear to fit that in type of thing. So here, we're going to showcase how does the build look? Does it look like we've improved it? Does it look like spending that 150x was worth it? I don't think the map clear is going to look too much different. One of the other things I like about this character is the AoE mod on the mace here, the 3% AoE per 50 strength. I think that's a really fun mod. It makes it so Ground Slam, a relatively like lower AoE skill, ends up having like a really large AoE. You can kind of see it. It really ends up looking pretty good, and I'm pretty happy with that actually. So this is what I probably shouldn't take that. I'm gonna be chicken. But yeah, so that's the difference. Did you guys notice much of a difference there in our DPS? Did it look like we were dealing less damage? Did it look like our character was much worse? Because we took off over 150x of gearing there, but ultimately, did the character really get that much worse? I would argue it didn't, and in some ways it might have gotten better. I think our single target is probably better. I mean, granted, I wasn't up close to the enemies, so I was dealing less damage. Ground Slam has a multiplier based on how close you are to the enemies, and I still killed those enemies even though they were far, far away. I'm sure you can go back and be like, okay, you killed Phoenix in 5 seconds versus 6 seconds here, and you can maybe make a DPS judgment there or whatever. But my point here is, I'm really upset with myself because I lost my ability to be creative and make good choices because I had a large amount of X in my currency tab, and I decided I'm going to spend it all and make min-max this. But really, when I said min-max this in my mind, I took away a lot of my creativity and ability to think about what's the best solution, what can I do that will be the most value. I went straight to, I'm going to make a giga rare chest. I'm going to make a giga rare gloves. I'm going to spend all this money. That's what my min-max mind went to, instead of actually thinking creatively and logically and critically about the gearing choices I was making. And I don't know, last night I kind of had a wake-up call when I tried this character out on Maven, and it really didn't feel all that crazy overpowered than I thought it would have been on a lower gear investment. Then I thought about it a little bit. I looked at some lesser expensive gear pieces like these 2 items here. And I thought, wow, if I swap those in, would it really been... Did the currency I spend really make that much of a difference? Stuff like that. Moral of the story is, I feel like I've let go of some of my ability to make a good character in sake of making an expensive character. So I'm gonna try to dial it back by 100 on my next character in terms of budget, really cut down on the cost, really try to think about making good decisions, because I want to make good builds that a lot of people can use. And if I'm just spending all this currency, like for what? To make a character that works for 5 people and isn't even well optimized, I don't know if I can do that, man. I don't know if you can really tell how upset I am with myself about this, because I really want to be critical of it, so that way in the future I'm better at making these decisions in optimizing my builds, because I would like to put forth competitively strong, good builds for the money you put into it, and also creative, interesting builds people can enjoy. And I feel like I've kind of lost that a little bit because I've had a lot of currency from selling my gear from previous characters, and I think I let the currency get to my head and I started making stupid decisions. So hopefully you guys kind of like that video of compare and contrast and me walking through my character here. I am excited about some other builds I have planned, specifically around Dissolution of Flesh. I'm really mad at myself too for this being my first Dissolution of Flesh build, and it kind of just being in my mind, this is a flop. I really wasted this item. I didn't play with it well in this character type of thing, and I want to showcase why I still believe this item's so strong, and I have some builds planned for it that are going to work really well with Dissolution of Flesh, and I'm kind of excited about them. So, anyways, that's the video, guys. Hopefully I wasn't too depressing of a watch. Hopefully what you got out of this video is Lance burned some currency, he made some stupid decisions, and he's going to make better builds in the future. That's the goal moving forward. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Take care, Exiles. Peace out.